Welcome back to Coaches Exploring the Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. And this week we have a special guest, Asanka, joining us. Asanka is a fellow Clarity coach trainer. Did some training with us a few years ago now, I guess. But I've had an ongoing relationship with Asanka and invited him along to join us. I think it's fitting that he joins us for this chapter, because one of the things that he's helped me tap into for the couple of years that we've been talking together is energy, my energy and the universe's energy, and so on. I think, but prior to getting to know him, I don't even know if I realized there was such a thing. But anyway, so very fitting, I think, to have you here today. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. And today we're on to part 2 of the Untethered Soul, Experiencing Energy, Chapter 5, Infinite Energy. And the first thing I highlighted was a little bit down the first paragraph on page 62. The truth is, every moment of your body, every emotion, every movement of your body, every emotion you have, and every thought that passes through your mind is an expenditure of energy. And I don't know. The first thing that came to my mind was like, no wonder I'm so tired.
Yeah.
But for me, reading through this chapter too, on the backs of the line from chapter 4 that has really stuck with me, which is, you're not even a human being. This whole idea of energy, like, then what am I? Like, I'm soul, or I'm spirit, or in the case of this chapter, I am energy. Is very cool. It has lots of implications, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess the first thing, just at that point, the first thing that came to mind for me was, well, then, a bit like you, Greg, yes, well, it is very tiring, but then how do we actually get the energy, like the thing, not knowing, let's say, where the true source of energy comes from, if it's not from our food, let's say, or not only from our food, then I'm kind of thinking, well, how is it that I'm still alive? That if I've been expending so much energy with all these thoughts, and the harder thoughts, let's say, the ones that don't bring love, joy, peace, elation, or anything else, or pleasure, or whatever. I'm thinking, well, so where does it come from? Which, quite simply, just as a book in itself, it's kind of exciting then to go on, because you're thinking, well, he's going to tell me, isn't he? It comes from,
Yeah.
So let's read on, kind of
see
thing.
where that comes from.
Yeah.
It's interesting at this point, because I haven't got through the whole book yet. I was wondering, is there a difference between the states of low energy versus states of, say, high energy? Because when I'm in a negative experience, when I'm feeling heavy and lethargic and tired, well, that's an energy too, but it's a different form. It's got a different quality to the space of love, joy, and all of that stuff. So it's like the life forces is still going through me, but the experience is completely different to that of all the other cooler states. And in these, books, that they're trying to communicate something that's difficult to communicate through words and those. So I was curious, is there a difference? Is it just there's a different flavor to it? And I don't know. I was curious about it.
Yeah, that makes me think, is it therefore like a difference in quantity or a difference in quality? That's kind of interesting, yeah.
I highlighted this part. It says creating thoughts, holding on to thoughts, recalling thoughts, generating emotions, controlling emotions, and disciplining powerful inner drives all require a tremendous expenditure of energy. And on the backs of what you just said, Sangha, it was like the sense I got was the energy is the same. It's kind of what we do with the energy that, I don't know, that flavors it or taints it or changes it. It's like I don't know, trying to think of a suitable metaphor. I mean, you know, um, you can put a battery into a device that does good things, or you can put a battery into a device that does terrible things. um, the battery's the same, or the energy is the same. It's kind of the how you use it, and that our thoughts and our system is what changes the energy into the form, like the I don't know. I'm saying this like I know what I'm talking about, but that's just what's occurring to me.
Yeah.
The metaphor comes to my mind is water, whether it's clean or dirty.
Mm.
Like if it's clean, we can drink it and all sorts of cool stuff. But if it is contaminated, then it's heavier, not much use. But it's still water there.
Mm.
The quality of it has changed. I mean, metaphors are, it's not always perfect. So
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah, and that Asanka brings me to another a thing I read years ago. A Japanese guy called Emoto did this really simple experiment with water. He got 2 bottles of pure water, quite simply, and he invited, I think he took it to a school or something like that, and he invited the pupils to come in every morning, and to one bottle to actually approach it with love and peace and any kind of kind thought that they could possibly imagine, and to the other bottle to approach it with like a bottle. That this is the bit that I thought was just amazing. A bottle of water, and it's from both bottles and from the same source, and to approach it with not so nice feelings, unpleasant, heavy, and hateful, disagreeable kind of thoughts, and I think they had to also sort of stick it with a post-it, like the word good or bad that they'd thought on each of the 2 bottles. And they examined the bottles after, I can't remember if it was days, weeks, or months. I honestly can't remember. But the actual molecular structure in the bottle that had received hateful messages had actually changed.
Mm.
So if you kind of think about that in terms of toxins, seeing as our body is made up of a large proportion of water, and I can't remember if it's 75% or more or less, I can't remember. But you can imagine that if we're full of those kind of thoughts, we're going to be pretty tired. Because, like, I guess the energy that the body has is trying to deal with all of that to bring it back to some sort of state of a natural balance and purity, let's say, which is what we're kind of equipped to do, to do anyway. That's how our bodies work. We come back to balance and purity.
Mm.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the similar experiment where people talk to their plants or whatever, and like the plants that are treated with love and kindness, and I don't know, it's that exchange of energy, I guess, that yields a more healthy, vibrant plant than one that doesn't get that energy exchange.
And I guess just from that story you just shared there, Elaine, and leading into the paragraphs we were talking about before we came on, the example of months and months of the guy not being able to move because he's depressed because he's been ditched by his girlfriend and everything's too heavy and impossible, and then all of a sudden he gets a call and life is different.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what was going on there? It's the same thing. Those whatever we're flooding ourselves with is being interpreted and giving us whatever comes up, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say something about interpretation.
Also, there's something that it points to me about, well, universal energy. So and we must therefore have, a bit like Greg's battery example, we must therefore have a universal supply of it. And I mean, he does indeed go on to say, that the more, put simply, the negative thoughts or goings on or doings or happenings outside or inside that can, let's say, attack you, the more of those you have, the less like energy is available to you. And then he goes on to explain for the purpose of what Michael Singer is saying, that it's the supply is there, a bit like Greg's battery, but you decide whether you want it or not. So you open and close. And that the best way to go through life, again, for your own personal end to well-being, is to stay open despite everything. So whether it's the girlfriend that's ditched you, or you've lost your job, or whatever, you've had a bad argument with somebody, or whatever, or even you've become unhealthy, the best way to approach anything is always from the love or the peace point of view. It's never from another point of view. And so that you can receive that energy that Greg said with his batteries, it's always there anyway. It's always there. And that's kind of one big choice we can make. And I mean, we come up to it further on. I actually haven't focused on the bit that meant he says that. I mean, when he comes on further on, for it's page 44. About halfway through, I guess. Yeah. When he starts speaking about the chakras and the heart center and the heart chakra. And we can either open it or close it, but it's always of our own doing, whichever way you look at it, because the energy is always available to you. Which is,
I think that's, for me, that was a revelation. This line, there is a source of energy you can draw upon from inside. It's distinct from the outer energy source. Like the fact of that is new to me. And it's energizing to realize, like, to once you see that for yourself and understand that it's there, and always available. Like, it's this whole idea, the title of the chapter, infinite energy. It's like, the world's in an energy crisis. If only it knew that it had an infinite source of energy at the core of its being.
Yeah. And I love how he just kind of states that, and he kind of sums that bit up with say, you should know about this energy because it's yours.
Yeah.
It's your birthright and it's unlimited.
Well, I think that's the funny story of the guy with his girlfriend stuff. It's like, it's a story that most of us can relate to in one way or the other, of how we go from a low energy state to a high energy state, like, at the snap of a finger, because of a phone call or because of an event of some kind or another. I like the notion of, don't take Singer's word for it. Go check in with your own experience and see for yourself if this is true.
Yeah.
And I would wager that most people, if they do that, will find that it does hold up.
That example gave me an experience of how Sid Banks refers to the formless part of us. Just having experienced that instantaneous change, like within a nanosecond from feeling, down, I don't want to get out of bed, to the next minute, I'm excited, I want to jump out of bed, like just instantly. Like, how could that even be possible, for this physical human body to have that kind of a, shift in the experience? And the mystery of it gave a flavor of that formlessness. But yeah, like you were saying, Greg, it was a very energizing experience just to read it, because the mind goes and goes, oh yeah, I remember when it happened this time, it happened that time, and yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah, and the sense of, from that as well, for me at least, the sense of, which of course is another energy, let's say energy producing kind of thing, the sense of hopefulness that came from the paragraph after the bit I just read before. You should know about this energy because it's yours, it's your birthright, and it's unlimited. And then you can call upon it. I mean, it just, I thought it was quite amusing, but it was very it's like this feeling of hopeful, which followed an energy producing sort of feeling, which was, you can call upon it any time you want. It has nothing to do with age. Some 80-year-old people have the energy enthusiasm of a child. I thought, yes, I'll have some of that. Like, yes. I thought, wow.
Yeah.
It begs a question to me: is there a difference? Is it the same energy when someone's experiencing, say, depression, and somebody's experiencing happiness? Is it the same energy, just in a different form, different flavor? I mean, because in like when we're talking about like the depression or sadness or grief, whatever, we talk about it as a thing,
Yeah.
The notion of, oh, it's the same. It's a bit like in the physical world. It's the same energy, but just they're all vibrating at a different frequency, and the texture, the feel, it's all depends on the frequency that it's in. So, what if it's the same case with things like our emotional states? It just very quickly normalizes everything. It's like, oh, the waves of the oceans will change to a different form at some point. It's still the ocean.
Yeah. I don't know if it's frequency or whatever. Obviously, when we think about energy or power, we think of these things scientifically like that. But I mean, what occurs to me I would have used the phraseology like low energy to describe like a depressed state, and high energy to describe like a happy, excited state. But what occurs to me is like, to the point what he said earlier that I read about, every thought, every emotion uses energy. It's like there's just as much, or perhaps even more, energy consumption happening in a depressed state. Like low doesn't mean low voltage or low usage or whatever. It's just you're using that energy in a way that we describe as low versus in a way that described as high. But it's, even though it feels lethargic and you're not doing anything and you're sitting around on the couch, or like the situation you described with the guy with the pizza boxes everywhere and stuff, it doesn't appear that you're using lots of energy. You're just using it in a way that is, debilitating or heavy, or but there's probably like if you could attach an energy meter or something, probably just as much energy being used to create all these negative thoughts and emotions and go that are going into that. It's just like you said, it's a different frequency or a different flavor, but it's still energy being used.
Yeah. And I guess, or at least what it appears to me that Michael Singer is saying, when he says, the sun doesn't shine differently on different people. If you're good, it shines on you. If you did something bad, it shines on you. And it's the same with the inner energy. The only difference is that with the inner energy, you have the ability to close up inside and block it. And when you close, the energy stops flowing. So I guess he's kind of not, and when you open, all the energy rushes up inside you. So I guess he at least is not differentiating between a different wavelength, but rather I can see it, like a dam. If you close the dam, the water gathers up on the other side until you open it again, and then the water will like level out. And as Asanka said, it still is water. It's still whatever it is. It's still the same thing, but what you do with it depends. And if you decide to close that thing off, then it won't be flowing, but the energy will always be there. But it's whether you've closed it off inside of you, which will then make you sit on your bed all day and leave pizza boxes around, kind of thing, or not.
I wonder if that close and open thing is a metaphor as opposed to an actual closing and opening. Because say I'm in an experience of, I don't know, a guilt or shame, and I would describe that as a closed state, but I'm still feeling the shame and guilt, and there's energy in that. I like how he described it because it helped me to get my head around it. But then I'm going, is it really closing and opening? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll jump in.
The idea that I'm kind of thinking, like, if the energy is 100% closed, then actually you're dead. So, and if it's 100% open, then you're probably doing great. You'll be doing great right onto a ripe old age until the natural human sources of energy. Because actually, in Chinese medicine, they would differentiate the supply of energy, which is kind of interesting. And there is a supply that does indeed come from the food you eat and the air that you breathe. And that's going to either deplete or enrich your actual physical state of being. And I'm just kind of wondering that there must be a moment then, if, metaphorically or not, but that something, and that must be again sort of the total vital energy that exists within it, there must be a moment that, unless you are going to literally drop down dead, you actually can't ever completely close that flow of energy. So there must be, I'm kind of thinking, the idea is that there must be another mechanism that will kind of sit in, that will, with or without the girlfriend coming back to you, you're going to get out of that depressive state anyway. But that's a question of time. So also going back to yours, is it a metaphor? I suppose it must be, because close, you be dead.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a metaphor to say that you consciously refuse what life can give you, which is life itself, of course, I imagine. And you can consciously, let's say, I wonder if a word like refuse might be better. Refuse that flow that will naturally go through you, rather than close and open. Because it's a bit kind of misleading, I believe, now that you mentioned it, Asanka, closed, open, don't know.
Yeah. I was thinking of it as a flow versus a recycling, almost like when you get in your car and put the air conditioning on, you can have it recirculate the same air so that it cools down faster in the summer versus having a flow of fresh air. So it's almost like when you're in that depressed state, there's still energy there, but it's this, he calls it the samskara, or I forget the exact word, but it's, that there's energy, but it's not flowing. It's like it's stuck and it's
stagnant.
and,
Yeah.
and things. You were going to say something earlier, Lynn?
I've forgotten now. No, listening to Asanka's point about, when I was reading this, I got a bit caught up in, does that mean I have a choice to open it and close it? And that didn't feel natural. Because if we go back to that example, because it is a good example and we can all relate to it, that when you're in that state, you don't notice that you're being closed. The guy's forgotten that he's on the sofa and eating out of pizza boxes. So this notion that that's a choice, that felt too literal for me. It just feels too literal. So taking it as a metaphor makes, to me anyway, a bit more sense. And I had this, listening to Asanka talking about that, I had this image of all this energy in our bodies, and as it's rising up, it's bumping into the past experience, the previous girlfriend that dumped me, the last time I had to get through that. So it's bumping up against all these things and getting through that, and that's the opening. So I just had this little visual of all those past experiences that the energy's always bumping up against, and where, what does that do for us? Because if it's the natural source, they're just kind of stuck points along the way, but it doesn't mean that it's forever tamped down, I guess. Yeah. But that open and closing thing being a choice felt too literal to me.
It occurs to me, I think early in the book, Michael talks about how everyone is conscious. That was really cool. But when I was reading that, this idea people talk about, I'd like to be with conscious people versus non-conscious people. But I love the way how he said, like, everyone is conscious. It just depends on what the consciousness of different people, what are they focusing on? So it's the same thing, but it's the focus is different. So I wonder if it's the same here with this.
He says here that the only reason you don't feel this energy all the time is because you block it. Like there's an ownership or a causality or a choice implied. Like, and I mean, as he goes on, he does talk about. I think there is, for me anyway, as I read this chapter, and it's probably taken me 3 or 4 times going through the whole book, but this chapter in particular, and gone from like phases of like, what the hell is this guy talking about, to is this possible? Oh yeah, that is possible. To this is definitely the way it is.
Yeah.
Like it's a bit of a journey of discovery of like, kind of your point, Lynn, like, this can't possibly be a choice, because why would I ever choose that? Or it happens so automatically, it can't possibly be a choice. And I don't know, like any of this work that we've been doing, as your grounding gets deeper, as you have insights in things, it seems to me like what happens is our awareness, or I don't know, our world expands, and we end up realizing like, oh yeah, I'm not locked into this. This isn't as automatic as I thought it was. And a little that, the thin end of the wedge idea is like, oh, there's a little crack here, and you start poking at it. Next thing you know, it's like, oh yeah, I can totally choose to be open or closed when I catch myself closing. Like maybe we can get to a point, like I'm sure, a singer who's been doing this for 40 something years is probably open 99.9% of the time. But I'm sure he still has moments where he closes. But he's just been doing it a lot longer and been aware of it a lot longer than most people.
Yeah, and what you have me thinking about there, Greg, is us going back to the beginning and our conversations around being the noticer, and what that does for you. So I guess, the more you notice what's going on, then the more likely that the whole openness element of energy is available to you.
I know when I first came across the idea of choice was reading the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was like habit 1, be proactive, and the whole idea was like, because he talks about the gap between stimulus and response, and you can choose your response. And when people first start out, what's presupposed is like, well, you've chosen to be miserable, or you've chosen to experience the world in a negative way, or in a particular experience or whatever. And at least for myself, the first knee-jerk reaction has been to resist that, to be like, well, that's ridiculous. I would never choose to be miserable. But then it's like the idea of it, like, oh, well, if it is a choice, then maybe I can choose otherwise. And then the possibilities start occurring to you and things. So yeah, it's, to me, there's the idea of, anytime the idea of choice comes up, it's almost like my natural resistance is the first line of defense. It can't possibly be a choice, because if it is, that means I've been choosing poorly, or there's implications of it that are uncomfortable until you see the other side of the coin, which is the implications of amazement and possibility that implies.
And I guess what he's pointing to overall in this chapter, somewhere towards the end, he said that is the being open to whatever. So you feel love until someone says something you don't like, and then you give up the love. You feel enthused about your job until someone criticizes something, and then you want to quit your job. It's your choice. He's entirely pointing to that's the choice lies there, in how we think about and process and respond, I suppose. And you can either close because you don't like what happened, or you can keep feeling love and enthusiasm by not closing. So I guess that's the distinction.
Yeah, there's I'm at the beginning of my page 45, where he starts off saying, there is a very simple method for staying open. You stay open by never closing. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
And as I underlined that, I thought, right, okay.
Yeah.
And then what I thought was, I kind of, this whole paragraph that starts there after he says it's really that simple, and you're thinking, well, I'm thinking, oh yeah, yeah. And then the next thought that came to mind, which I just wrote down beside, well, this is kind of like the intersection between this paragraph, I'll explain. It's like the intersection between that part of us that is indeed guided, managed, if you like, handled by that pure energy, the spirit, universal energy, the divine, whatever it is. It's like the intersection between that and then our humanness, the ego brain, however you like to call it, the bit that thinks and gets in the way of everything and creates the resistance that Greg was speaking about. So the thought that came to mind was, this paragraph, I'll read out the bit he says, all you have to do is to decide whether you're willing to stay open or whether you think it's worth closing. You can actually train yourself to forget how to close. So this idea, you start training yourself. Well, this is a very physical thing. It's a very physical or mental, let's say, and emotional thing, which is separated, if you like, from that part that is just pure and spiritual, where it has no form and has no thoughts, indeed. So, but what I thought about all of that whole paragraph, and then which ends, it's ultimately under your control, it really knocks the head off, if you like, those wonderful sentences that can block anybody's heart, was when we come out with things, oh, this is just the way I am. It just knocks it off the planet. But but speaks to, actually you can deal with you being human because you can get yourself trained, you can work it out, you can get your head around it, you can, do things also to go back and, let's say, instruct, shall we say, I'll use the word, I don't know whether that's a good word or not, the heart, which is a metaphor for a situation of love and peace and resilience and courage and beautifulness, so very metaphorical. It's not the organ that pumps blood around your body, it's not that. To stay open. And I love that because it just sort of says, okay, but we're human, we're going to be in and out of this all the time, basically. But you can always tend towards the openness, the free flowing, the love, the passion that is life, if you like. You can go there if you wish.
And at the end of the next sentence after what you just read says, closing is a habit, and just like any other habit, it can be broken.
Yeah.
And on the backs of what you just said, like this is when I'm always trying to tie in principles kind of stuff in this, but to me, it's like there's innocence to the closing, right? In that it's become a habit, and it's served a purpose. It's like, I don't know what, there's probably an origin story behind every closing habit of some incidents when you were a child or something that closing made sense. Closing is what saved you from a situation or whatever, at least an interpretation of that. But I love the idea that, it's nothing more or less than a habit, and it can be, just like any other habit, it can be changed. So I think that's very hopeful. This whole next, like in my book anyway, like 3 or 4 pages is where I basically had the 5-inch highlighter and just highlight the whole the whole page. And the next line, one of the lines I highlighted was, a smell can make you open or close. And so can see a car of a certain color and so on. And I thought, like, I as you all know, I think I've been dealing with my food thing, and I'm like, this whole chapter has put a whole new light on what possibly can be going on or used to be going on. And it's like the because I've had that sensation. I could be starving, like physically feeling starving, and go to somebody's house or go to a restaurant and smell something that I don't find appealing, and instantly I'm not hungry anymore.
I thought of you deeply, Greg, when I read that bit. I was so pleased you said what you said. Yeah.
So I mean, talk about insights. Like I've been bombarded with insights as a result of this, and hope. I'd say insights wrapped in hope. That what I've been perceiving to have been my biggest problem in my life until now has been nothing but a habit of closing, triggered by sights and smells and things.
Listening to you, Elaine, and Greg also, reflecting this staying open, what comes to mind is how Sid refers to not being afraid of experience. And if you are open to anything that comes up, well, it doesn't stick around because there's no resistance to it. Then what follows through is, and then it lets me, what, like with the food thing, like if a different sight or a scent comes up, and what if the system stayed open to it, and then what might happen,
That's a great catch or a great observation, that Sid quote, because I think for anyone that I've come across in the principles, that's one of the quotes that everyone latches onto is, if people could learn to not be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. It's like, Michael Singer's version of that would be, if people could learn to be open, that alone would change the world.
Right. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you caught that.
Throughout this chapter, particularly toward the second half, I wondered, which part of us is he talking to? Talking to my ego? Is he talking to my, true self? Because, when I was listening to the audio version of it where he was saying, it's yours, it's your energy, and you close you up. But I'm like, who's the you he's referring to? It has to be the human aspect of me, is what occurred to me. Or this system that's doing its automatic thing. And I went on a bit of a tangent and a rabbit hole with that, but that was really, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant, Asanka.
Yeah.
So what just came up for me there was this had not occurred to me, but it did now. So the you versus the you is in this chapter, if the you he is speaking to is our humanness, is the energy, the you. As Sid was saying, I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to you. So now it's like, okay, is the energy the big you, and all of these other aspects in this chapter is that he's speaking to is that all our humanness and ego and thoughts and beliefs and past, and yeah, that feels like it makes sense.
I just started tying myself in knots, going like, okay, so who's he talking to? And then it's like, well, who's listening?
Who am I?
Which one of me is listening?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
yeah.
please.
Just to say, yeah, exactly, and that perhaps explains. I was Zanka, just before you came on, I was just saying that actually, although we were speaking about, the openness of actually having a higher energy or a better energy or some more energy or whatever it was, and I was just saying that indeed, so that's kind of interesting. I think perhaps he's maybe speaking to the various yous. And that explains why I mentioned that I actually got to the end of this, although I loved every single word that he wrote, but I actually felt tired. I was a bit drained. So I wonder if there was some kind of internal resistance going on as I was reading. Maybe bits, because there were other bits that I was going, oh, fabulous. And then there was other bits and I was going, oh, about that. So maybe speaking to both, the you and the you.
Sometimes they talk about, Elaine, when we have been resisting something for a long time and we have an insight or just this opening and we let go of that resistance, and suddenly the whole system feels tired because it felt normal to resist this thing all our lives. And then when we let go of it, we're holding this burden and we let it go. It's like, wow, I'm so tired. So it's actually a good thing. It's like, that could be another reason that occurs to me when you shared it.
Yeah. Apparently, just on the back end of that, just as a little, apparently, and when you sort of flop down on the sofa after a hard day's work and you go, oh, something like that, it's over, it's done. Well, apparently, horses, when they've learned something, like they're doing their lunge routine or they're learning dressage, as a young horse with their rider or whatever, apparently they sigh when they've actually learned something, like really learned it, sort of embedded learned. That was the other thing that came to mind. And we do that too. We kind of go, ah, yeah. That kind of. So yeah, it could have been that too.
I know Jamie often on clarity weekends and things, people will have the experience of being completely exhausted afterwards, and to kind of in line with the examples you're sharing, the song, it's this energy release of letting go.
Yeah.
And it's quite common. It's almost like when I was getting coached with Jamie and he said, just breathe. It was like later when I rewatched, it's like, oh yes, like those are the moments you want. You want to, the feeling exhausted after something. That's like a sign or an indicator that it's, something significant has just happened.
And I suppose at a physiological level as well, if there's, the release, the letting go, at that point, you're also, all those toxic chemicals that the hormonal system will create and then release for whatever reason. At that moment, in that letting go, it's that toxic stuff sort of getting itself ready to literally the next time you go into the bathroom to get out of your body, and it will, or you'll sweat or you'll do something, and it'll, which is of course an energy expenditure as well, albeit a good thing. It'd be another of those things that he speaks about in the beginning of the chapter about expending energy.
There's a part here in my book, it's page 70, that where he talks about the outside, but it says, at first it feels unnatural since your innate tendency is to close as a means of protection. But closing your heart does not really protect you from anything. It just cuts you off from your source of energy. In the end, it only serves to lock you inside. What you'll find is that the only thing you really want from life is to feel enthusiasm, joy, and love. And if you can feel that all the time, then who cares what happens outside? And it's like, I mean, to me, in relation to my food thing too, it's like, oh yeah, like all these tendencies I've had and habits to protect myself innocently is like, oh yeah, I'm just cutting myself off. Like it's just a misunderstanding. It's kind of the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
And just being open. And I love this idea of like, because I mean, we were talking earlier about these electric bikes and scooters that are all over my neighborhood now. It's like, who cares what happens outside? Like, does it really matter that somebody's abandoned a bike on the lawn across the street from my house? Not really. But there's there's part of me that's like, and to the point of like which you is it talking? It's like that voice in my head is like, no, you need to care about what's going on outside. Like outside is everything. Outside is important.
Yeah. I love that, Greg, because I guess the difference here is that if we're not careful, you would flip right off to the other side of craziness. Like, well, I just don't care anymore, and you can just do whatever you like. You can run around and you're on one of those bikes naked if you so wish, but of course we're out of alignment here. So there's something about what does not caring mean for you? It means and like you said, well, so what do I care about? It like it's the tone. It's more like, well, there is no importance, said with love, of having a bike on somebody else's lawn outside in my front garden or whatever. But maybe if we take that a step further at a practical level, there may be somebody I could talk to, a police official or somebody, or the bike people themselves, or, do you get what I mean? It's like, yes, you don't care about it anymore.
Yeah.
But there is a thing in this human life that we're living that things need to be kind of kept in some sort of orderly fashion, perhaps, or to a limit of civilization and connection with your next door neighbors, even kind of thing. There's a slight difference there in the and if the love is flowing, if we're open, if we're all with it, we can do that thing that needs to be done with a higher chance of success, of getting some sort of positive end result, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than, just like, well, who cares?
Yeah. Well, he says here, honor and respect the situation and deal with it. By all means, deal with it. Do the best you can, but deal with it with openness. Deal with excitement and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
It's like, you can, not caring doesn't mean don't deal with it. Just deal with it with openness.
Yeah.
The not caring brings up the word for me, the bypass. And bypass, it's a more of a function of the ego as opposed to the space of love.
Mm.
So I wonder when we go, I don't care about it. I think that might be our personal mind as opposed to the
Impersonal.
Yeah,
universe.
for sure.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
There's just moving on the page that you're on, you were on there, Greg. I had a conversation earlier with a friend, and we were talking about a situation in her family, and not being in a place of not caring, but letting it unfold. And after what he just reading this paragraph, which I had only read again this morning, and thinking of this area here, and it's not that you don't care. And he goes on here to say, I'm not going to close, I'm going to relax, I'm going to let this situation take place and be there with it. And I think there's so much in that, and knowing that things will unfold. We can have care. You can care about that bicycle, Greg. If you were to approach it in a way of being open and not in a I'm pissed off someone's left the bike on the lawn type of thing, you will probably come to a better outcome. So yeah, it just kind of strikes me that there's so much of the state. I keep having this vision of a valve. That's all. The whole time we're speaking, I have this vision of a valve, just a little valve opening and closing, and the points where we have the opportunity to just let it keep popping. But yeah, just the notion that I'm not going to close, I'm going to relax and let the situation take place and be there with it. If we were to apply that to so many things, that's certainly openness. Feels very peaceful to me.
It feels very empowering as well. Like
Yeah.
it puts you into your own I don't like the word power at all, actually, but I think you know what I mean. You're into your own self, your own being, and a sense of able to, at this point, deal with anything. Because we all know, of course, that life happens. So it's going to go on. There are going to be many more bikes on your garden kind of thing. But that's kind of, you had this image of a valve. I kind of have a little image of Superman, standing there tall with his cape and in the S kind of thing. But like, the good man Superman, not the mighty warrior sort of thing. And that feels good, the Superman who's there to help at any given moment in time, or because he's got himself sorted, sort of thing. That's the kind of feeling,
I really like how each one of us are seeing this differently. I was reflecting how there's a series of books by a guy named James Redfield called The Celestine Prophecy, and on one of the books it's about drawing in energy from the space, I think, or this infinite energy, and Rick often talks about the science fiction shows that we're into, and there used to be a show called The Stargate Atlantis, and he talks about this 0 point energy drawing from space. This is the thing that's sticking with me. The instant change of, this high level of energy that we can experience, and it just gives so much hope and so much sense of freedom. Like it's like even if I'm feeling really low, I know this can change in a moment. And so it's like I think this is where the word not caring comes in, but not in the sense of I don't care. It's more like, okay, I'm in a low mood, but I'm not going to take it as seriously as I otherwise would if I knew that I didn't have access to all of this infinite energy that can be here in a nanosecond.
Yeah.
Just being conscious of the time thought maybe I'll read the last paragraph of the chapter just to close out, if that's good. It says, the most important thing in life is your inner energy. If you're always tired and never enthused, then life is no fun. But if you're always inspired and filled with energy, then every minute of every day is an exciting experience. Learn to work with these things. Through meditation, through awareness, and willful efforts, you can learn to keep your centers open. You do this just by relaxing and releasing. You do this by not buying into the concept that there is anything worth closing over. Remember, if you love life, nothing is worth closing over. Nothing ever is worth closing your heart over.
Here, here.
Yeah, I had a reaction to the willful efforts part. Being in the principles was, I'm like, the more we get that understanding, things shifts. The efforting feels, for me, being in my head, which is, the efforting part comes in. But that was my interpretation, the way how I observe my system works.
Cool. Well, maybe more will be revealed in chapter 6, the secrets of the spiritual heart. So we'll see. Anyway, it's great having you along today. And, we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.